Good morning, everyone. Thanks for sharing with us this new experience of the Edna O'Brien Cole McCann Chair of Irish Studies and the Irish Diaspora. Welcome all those who decided to join us, and especially I want to greet Susan Hoy, who is the mentor of this activity. She was very kind sharing this idea with us, and this idea has been enforced in as part of the activities of our sister chair, the W.B. Yeats Chair of Irish Studies at the University of Sao Paulo, Brazil. So we are very pleased to have Susan, to have Laura, to have dear friends. And I would like to briefly introduce Miriam Germani and Enrique Basabe, two former students of mine. They are brilliant in what they do in different fields, in the fields of literature. Both of them are literature lovers, and also in the fields of phonetics and phonology, Miriam and Kiki, especially in education. So I give them now the floor and all the best for this new cycle that in the year 2022 will be made up of 4 sessions. Is that right? Okay, all the best for both of you. Okay, and let's enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mariela. Well, I just want to thank you all for being here. We have students from our university. We both, Kike and I, work at the Foreign Languages Department at the National University of La Pampa, for those of you who don't know us. And here we have some students of our course of studies, some colleagues from our university, and also we would like to welcome the students or colleagues from other universities in Latin America, because I know there are people from Brazil and someone from Mexico. So we are very pleased to have you. And we also want to thank Mariela for inviting us to offer this workshop, and within the framework of the Chair of Irish Studies, and Laura Izarra, who was also a mentor for us, because we started working with Irish Studies, starting with a seminar that she kindly offered us. And also Susan, who's been very who's willing to share with us her idea and to not just share her idea, but also share the meetings or some of the meetings with us, and particularly this meeting. So this meeting will be in charge of Kike, so I will pass the floor to him.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Miriam. So as to start, and so that everybody knows the way we're going to work, I'm just going to do a brief structure of the workshops and how we're going to do them. Originally, we will offer a brief biography and reference to the key words of the author that we are going to study in each session, because we have chosen a sort of eclectic corpus. Today we have Yeats, who is a very traditional Irish poet, but then we have some poems taken from a blog, from a personal blog of an author, and even a song at some point. And so we thought it was a good idea to introduce, especially the younger generations, the students that are accompanying us, to who the authors of the poems are going to work are. Then Miriam is going, we copied this idea of performing from Susan, and so Miriam, who is a specialist in phonetics and phonology, will read a poem that we select for analysis for us, And then we are going to propose an analysis, which will usually be in a bottom-up approach, as we usually do in literature classes. We have a sort of traditional formation in literature as well, and so then going to the overall meanings of the poem. In some sessions, we're going to propose also different works in breakout rooms or in pairs. But today, as we have Susan Hoy trying to close the first meeting for us, she will kindly offer her views on Yeats and the poem, and also read a second poem by the end of the session. So we're very grateful for that. And okay, so I think that's it as regards the structure of the session. And so as to start with the first poem, I'm going to show you a little bit of a presentation on Yeats. Is the author we are studying today. So I think we are there. And so am I sharing it? Yes. So okay, well, this is just to introduce us to the workshop, just a little cover, and then so William Butler Yeats, especially for those who don't know him, it was a key figure. It was a key figure in Irish poetry. He was born in Dublin in the 19th century, 1816, but then moved constantly between London and Paris. So he's well known for his poetry and to a lesser extent for his drama. In 1889, he met Morgan, who is a fiery nationalist, who will become the love of his life, and to whom he would propose many times, even at an adult age, when Morgan had already married John Bright, who was another nationalist, and he got killed in this rising. He got executed after this rising of 1916. And this is important, is a key event in his life, this meeting Morgan, because this would be also part of the poem we are reading today. Then he met Lady Gregory and John Millington Synge, also significant English writers, and he became involved in the Irish literary revival, as it was known, at the beginning of the 1906. I think it was the foundation of the Abbey Theatre, now the National Theatre of Ireland, and later on awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature for his always inspired poetry, which in highly artistic form gives expression to the spirit of the whole nation. Later on, he married, having acknowledged Morgan's rejection. He married and later had 2 children. And in 1922, he was appointed Senator of the Irish Free States and served for 2 periods. Now, William Butler Yeats and his poetry. Just a brief description of his poetry, so as to introduce us to the poem we are going to read today. His poetry was very much influenced by Blake and Shelley, and he was very much interested in the former's concept of the poet's social function, meaning what the poet function in society is. And there is a relationship between this and political involvement, or the discussion as to the poet has to be politically involved or not. But for the biographers and some critics, he was captivated more by the idea of the great poet rather than that of the great poem, meaning that, and that's why I intentionally included those images of William Butler Yeats here, because apparently he was much concerned with becoming a great poet and to showing the world he was a great poem. And that's why For some biographers, those pictures in which he's shown surrounded by books or in a library and with his disheveled hair, or thinking as if he were lost in his own mind. Okay, and so he sees poetry as a form of identity, and as we will see in the poem we are analyzing today, his poetry was very much about himself and his personal life. He considered himself to be the last romantic, these are Yeats' words, probably, and then emphasizing as one of the traits of his work, the sense of isolation and self-conscious. His poetry has three phases: the Celtic myth, when he was very young, he started publishing poetry when he was 17, I think. And then the series of, when the collected poems were published in 1908, we can set that as the beginning of the second phase, the one which was much concerned with biographical and historical events. And the poem we're reading today belongs in that phase. And the last one, in which he developed this idea of the Gaiers and the system of binary opposites that is present in all his poetry, which was technically very accurate, but he would be moving towards issues of more emotional, intellectual, and even philosophical context from a vision onwards. Then this idea that I highlighted here is highly debatable in terms of Yeats, that all literature can be used for politics, because he was not that enthusiastic about that idea at the very beginning of his career, in the sense that he thought that literature preceded politics in the sense of action, in a way. So literature can be used as politics, used for politics, but to frame first the idea or the beauty of what a nation such as Ireland was, and only then action will come. This is also another action would come. This is also another important idea that we have to have in mind for the poem we're reading today. Then, as I told you some minutes ago about this constant binary oppositions between elements in his poetry, those opposites would supply the constant tension that we are going to feel throughout his poetry. Some students, I don't know if they were here, but they have read with me An Irish Airman for Sissy's Death, or The Lake Isle of Innisfree, and even in a poem that could be thought of as very simple as The Lake Isle of Innisfree, we have this tension in that case between time and space and how the two come together. This idea is also reflected in his idea of Ireland. Here the half means the Catholic and the Protestant halves, as far as I know. And this is from Yeats. I thought we might bring the halves together, or perhaps by the end of his career, meaning all the halves together, so all the binary opposites that exist. But in this case, referring to Ireland, because he was of Protestant ancestry, but he also acknowledged and respected the Catholic traditions of Ireland. I thought we might bring the halves together if we had a national literature that made Ireland beautiful in the memory. And that is the end of this little presentation on Yeats. Now, Miriam, as far as I know, will read the poem.
Yes, okay, so I'm going to read the poem. No Second Troy by William Butler Yeats. Why should I blame her that she filled my days with misery, or that she would have taught to ignorant men most violent ways, or hurled the little streets upon the great, had they but courage equal to desire? What could have made her peaceful, with a mind that nobleness made simple as a fire, with beauty like a tightened bow, a kind that is not natural in an age like this, being high and solitary and most stern? Why? What could she have done, being what she is? Was there another Troy for her to burn?
Okay, sorry, I was a little bit slow in sending you the poem, and we're a little bit anxious because this is the first time we are doing this. And so by the time I share the poem, Miriam had already started reading.
Shall I read again?
I don't know, I should wish.
No, not necessary, I think.
By the end of the analysis, if you want. Okay. So I will be in charge again of the little analysis of the poem. So I'm back to presentation. Am I sharing it? Yes. So as I told you, first we'll start with a little bit of the form of the poem, and then we'll move to issues of content and what the poem tells us. Okay, so No Second Troy is a Shakespearean sonnet minus the couplet, meaning it's a Shakespearean sonnet in the sense that it should have, or it should, yeah, for it to be a sonnet, it should have 14 lines. It's just 12 lines. That's why we can label it as a Shakespearean sonnet minus the couplet. The final refrain, the final couplet in Shakespearean sonnet is not there, but it follows the sonnet form of the iambic pentameter and the theme, which is the love that cannot be reached. Okay, that's why Shakespeare is there. And then its hypotext is said to be a previous, I think it was 18th century poem by William Cowper, an English writer, about some riots happening in England and in which houses were burned. And this inspired Yeats in the sense that he was also concerned, he was also highly interested, I would say, in this idea of Troy. And so he connected the houses burned in England with Troy being burnt, and how a woman such as Morgan inspired him, how a woman inspired a whole army, or how a woman would engender such passions as to have a whole army moved and fight a war, as in the Trojan War. Okay, so here we can already identify in the poem 3 levels of meaning, or the 3 levels of meaning that Yeats intended us to see in the poem. We have the level of myth, because it's Helen of Troy there, even from the very beginning of the title, even though Helen is not mentioned, and we have a woman there, which then he would equate with Morgan. The level of the nation and the historical events, the local events happening in Ireland at the beginning of the 1910s. Remember that this is the period taking us to the rising of 1916, and then to Irish independence in 1922. So it's 10 years before Irish independence. And then the level of the person, which is the level of the personal life of William Butler Yeats himself and his relationship with Morgan. Then, structurally, the poem is made up of 4 rhetorical questions, as you would see. This shouldn't be done, I think, from the point of view of literature, because it's like dissecting a poem. But there you have the 4 questions that made the poems. And so what I propose to do now is an analysis in terms of the meanings, a read through each of these 4 questions. So there are 4 rhetorical questions, and if you notice, 3 of them are WH questions. Why should I blame her? Blah, blah, blah. What could have made her peaceful with the mind? Blah, blah, blah. Why? What could she have done? Later on, we'll move to this question. And was there another Troy for her to burn? To which we have an answer, which is in the title itself, and so the poem comes full circle. Was there another Troy for her to burn? And we have the title of the poem, No Second Troy. So the answer is no. Then Let's move through each of the questions. Well, why should I blame her that she filled my days with misery? That is pretty simple. Probably this I, we can equate the persona with Yeats himself addressing Morgan. No, not necessarily Morgan because it's her, but talking to us about her. Why should I blame her that she filled my days with misery? Pretty simple, the meaning is there. Or that she would of late have taught to ignorant men most violent ways. And there we have the two levels of meaning combined, the personal history, his relationship to this activist, to this nationalist, and what she is doing, what she was doing at that time, teaching to ignorant men most violent ways. And we can see there his Yeats' position towards, as I told you, as I pointed out before, towards the initial rebellions in Ireland. Those men were ignorant for him and most violent ways. So ignorant men and most violent ways. For some critics, this also may be connected with Yeats' idea of class consciousness, or what Yeats, class consciousness itself, meaning usually siding with the higher classes and not necessarily the working classes, lower classes, who were the ones that were more prone to violence and to getting rid of the British rule. And those were the people with whom Morgan was actually working on. That's why the word "hold," or held the little streets upon the great. Well, this line has at least two possible readings. One could be the most possible, no, both of them are possible, I think. The little streets of Ireland or the little streets of Dublin upon the great. Great may mean Great Britain. And Yeats may be, again, this is when he was not truly convinced of action, meaning of true action or warfare to get independence. And so the little streets would be the little streets of Dublin, and the great, those of London, Great Britain. That's why great, because he considered he hated the hatred the British, his hatred of the British was tempered by his love of the British, and also especially of the British language. Okay, a second reading could be that Yeats' idea that Dublin or that Ireland itself was not still ready to provide a legend, to become great. And so the connection would be the little streets of Dublin, still information, still provincial, and the greatness of Troy, the greatness of antiquity, which could not be reached at this stage yet. Later on, he would change that idea when he wrote Easter 1916, which is like 4 or 5 years later. And there he acknowledged that Ireland was ready to become a legend when he said, wherever green is worn, a terrible beauty is born in the end of Easter 1916. But going back to this line, last line, have they but courage equal to desire? Probably, no, probably no. He's referring here to those ignorant men, those who follow warfare and guerrilla action to get independence. And in a way, contrasting, and we will see all the contrast later when we finish the analysis, courage equal to desire. We could read courage as the courage of the people who go and do things, who go and act out of impulse, and desire, his desire, probably his desire for Morgan, his desire for his muse, and that would turn desire into art, into poetry, into, according to Yeats, a more elevated form. Let's go on with the read through to the second question. I'm checking out time because I don't want to, sorry, this is like a teaching thing. I don't want to get you like listening to me here forever. So second question, and we had a whole problem before we started the workshop here because of the two different readings we can have of this. Second question goes, what could have made her peaceful with a mind that nobleness made simple as fire? What could have made her peaceful with a mind that nobleness made simple as fire? Then my reading would be, what could have made Morgan peaceful with the mind? I read the mind here as the poet's mind, Yeats' mind, that nobleness made simple as a fire. Nobleness, his nobleness of feelings and his nobleness as a code of conduct, a code of action, a way of acting, made simple as a fire in the sense of transforming or making something, meaning his main weapon being simplicity. As a fire, very complex simile, because a fire is something simple, but at the same time, extremely complex, extremely pure, extremely natural. With beauty like a Titan bow, and I would read this as beauty, what he pursued, like a Titan bow, meaning, again, a very difficult simile, like a Titan bow, probably referring to his virility, where we have two different readings with Miriam. I would say his virility, the virility meaning his weapon, and also the reference or the relationship with Troy. Okay, like a Titan bow. A kind that is not natural in an age like this, probably the pursuit of beauty that Yeats pursued, and the common complaint of the modernist being not as acknowledged by the people of this age, by contemporariness, we can say. Being high and solitary and most stern. This probably continuing this idea of the poet's mind and in relationship to Yeats himself, being high probably in a way contrasting the ignorant men using violent ways in the previous question, and solitary against that solitude and that loneliness that is involved in his romantic quality, and most stern, the seriousness of his tasks. Second reading and another reading would be that in a way all of this refers to Morgan, and I see this more like applying to Yeats himself and to his person and to the highly personal quality of his poetry. Probably Susan would may tell us what her reading is later. And let's move on to the end of the poem, which goes, why? What could she have done being what she is? Meaning this why as if it were a sigh, like saying, okay, there is like a shrug, there is nothing else to do, because if you see there, the why is not integrated to the question. The question starts later. This why is like added, and we have why, like, what could she have done being what she is? And the final question, was there another Troy for her to burn? We say the answer was no. There was no way. Probably Yeats living here, his enterprise of reaching Morgan's love, and probably leaving perhaps giving us his views on the action that will take us to Irish independence. Okay, so there we have seen the three levels again of myth, nation, and person. And as a final little thing, I started doing this, which is just as things that I do with my students in grammar, but just matching opposites in the poem: ignorant and nobleness, little and great, violent and peaceful, courage, desire, which is like at the lexical level. Probably this is too late because we have gone throughout the meanings of the poem, so this is not necessary. But I just wanted to show one of the characteristics of Yeats' poetry that I had mentioned at the very beginning of the poem, which is the poem being created upon an accurate and we can say even perfect play of contrasts between these elements that I mentioned. They are some of them mentioned in the poem, and some of them which can be easily derived from it. So I leave some minutes for you to think about that. And then if Miriam wants to read the poem again, now that we have analyzed it for further interpretation and insight.
Yes, there is a question from Mariela about the poem. Shall I read it? Can you read it or?
Yes, I can. The great widows in yep, probably, I think, yeah, I think it could be. Yeah, but Yeats would, I think, would deride their courage at this time, because he was, I think this poem was written at a time in which he was not yet convinced of the meaning of the positiveness of just having courage. Even though later he would revise his views and he would sing to those who actually made the rebellion and moved Ireland to final freedom. Okay.
I don't know if that has answered Mariela's question. Okay.
Partially, I would say, sorry.
Okay, so I read it once more and then I'll pass the floor to Susan. Yes, Mariela?
Yes, no, I think that Yeats might have implied that more courage was needed, okay, than just desire. That's why I thought he could have been using literature, his poem, to say, well, we need more courage and more greatness on the part of those of the rebels, I think. No, that was just a thought. Okay.
No, yes. No, but I think you're probably right, Mariela, because he also, I think that Yeats also sided with the modernists in the sense of their feelings of emasculation, like meaning we are not courageous enough to do stuff.
Okay.
But at the same time, he was afraid, and he apparently rejected taking the arms. Let's say that's what I.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Okay.
Okay.
So we thought of reading it again now that you followed this analysis, and then, as I said before, I'll introduce Susan. So again, no second try. Why should I blame her that she filled my days with misery, or that she would have taught to ignorant men most violent ways, or hurled the little streets upon the great, had they but courage equal to desire? What could have made her peaceful, with a mind that nobleness made simple as a fire, with beauty like a tightened bow, a kind that is not natural in an age like this, being high and solitary and most stern? Why? What could she have done, being what she is? Was there another Troy for her to burn? Okay, so now just a few words about Susan. She was born in Ballina, County Mayo, Ireland, and she holds a diploma in oratory and theatre from the London School of Music. She has also taken courses in English literature, and being from the west of Ireland, the poetry of W.B. Yeats has always been her favorite. She's currently married to the Irish ambassador to Brazil and lives in Brasilia. Since May 2021, she's in charge of this cycle called Poetry at Midday, organized by the Chair of Irish Studies, coordinated or directed by Laura Izarra, who's here with us today. So now, Susan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm very happy to be here today as part of this very interesting discussion on No Second Troy, which is a very famous poem, and a poem I think that has so many different depths to it that it's a wonderful poem to study. And I think Enrique, you mentioned like a lot of, you know, what I would have thought about the poem. You know, Troy, first of all, like, you know, Yeats was hugely influenced by myth, and Troy, he absolutely loved that idea of the likes of Helen of Troy being a woman who was capable to inspire an army to come and rescue her. And, you know, he basically compares, I think, Maud Gonne to Helen of Troy. And, you know, for him, she inspired great feeling like that of, you know, the army. And I think, again, the Irish political situation at this time, like the poem was written and published up about 1912, I think, which was a very interesting time in Ireland, because at that time it was before the rising of 1916. And there was a lot at that time of call for Ireland, for Irish independence. But Yeats himself wasn't particularly involved in that at this stage, and he didn't ever really think that it was going to happen. So basically 1916 took him by surprise. And I think that's seen there in the poem, where he regarded the Irish people almost unworthy of Maud Gonne's leadership of them, because Maud Gonne herself was a fiery rebel, and he didn't believe that she was going to be successful in inspiring them to rise up. And therefore he, you know, I feel that his question there was, well, she can't be successful at that, so she has to spend her time making my life miserable, which is what he felt that she was doing. And that it wasn't her fault that she was trying to inspire these Irish people to rise up, but it wasn't going to happen. And therefore she just had to be content with making Yeats's life a misery and a very complicated life. I also think, like Maud Gonne, like she is the whole soul of this poem for me. She, you know, his relationship with her up until 1898, when he met her in 1889, I think, yeah. And at that stage, he said that she was like, you know, she was absolutely the love of his life. She was let me see, I've written it down here, what he actually said, you know, her virginal goddess, you know, and, you know, when she went and married John McBride, he was distraught. But he also writes of his first meeting with her as the start of all his troubling. So, you know, he did, like, as in his poetry, become more and more troubled as the relationship failed to progress. But I do think that most of his poetry, like, she is so present in so much of it that she herself said that she, it was, you know, she did people a favor by never marrying him, because he, by her keeping him in this state of unhappiness, he gave the world some of his greatest poetry, greatest love poetry, and also the likes of this poem, which I also feel at this stage is kind of like, by 1912, he had accepted this idea that he would never, he and Maud Gonne would never be together as a married couple in the sense of the word. And I feel that there's bits of annoyance in this poem with her. I mean, I think there, Ricky, I know you, that part where you talked about the verse being reflective of Yeats himself, with his, when you talk about what could have made her peaceful with a mind that nobleness made simple as a fire. Well, I've always thought of that as her mind rather than Yeats's mind. And again, I feel that, like, when he in this simile, like this simple as a fire, we can see that Yeats is kind of like referring to, in my interpretation of her, as like something quite destructive. You know, fire, although it's beautiful, it's also destructive. And then when you come on to like that beauty, like a tightened bow, like I get the image of this bow ready to shoot, and, you know, shooting and be destructive again. And I fear that, like, or I think that, like, Yeats has at this stage seen, you know, that not just is she this amazing goddess that he worshipped, but she is also capable of being a destroyer and having this terrible effect on him. And that maybe it's just that, you know, he's saying, well, you know, Maud, there is no second Troy for you to burn. So, you know, it just has to be your lot in life, that you have to be content with ruining my life. I read also, there's a book about Maud Gonne, or about Yeats and women, that he talks, the author Deirdre Toomey is her name, and her chapter on Maud Gonne is very interesting, because she talks about the fact that there was a change in the sort of poetry that, or the way that Yeats referred to Maud after he found out that, you know, she had a relationship with a French bureaucrat. He knew her for 10 years before he really found that out. I mean, there were rumors, it seems, but he had said, you know, they were just scandalous rumors. But they had become quite close and were working together. They both had an interest in the occult and Celtic myths, and they were working on papers together. And in December 98, she spoke to him of her dreams and the fact that she had dreamt about him, and that she had dreamt that she had kissed him, and she dreamt that they were married. And this Yeats had recorded these thoughts in his visions notebooks. So it kind of would be the first time that she had, it seemed at that stage, to me anyway, that she was coming around to the idea of being in a relationship with him. And then she actually confessed to him, told him her deep secrets about the fact that she had 2 children by a French politician. One of them had died, actually. And she and they had been very close then. And I think that it seems she thought he would propose again, but he didn't. And then she went off to France, and there's a feeling that, you know, she at that time was a little spurned. And when he did eventually propose again, he sort of refers to it, oh, I talked about marriage. But then she, at this stage, had felt, well, no, it's not going to happen. And from there on, her refusals became more, you know, she said those very famous words about the fact that she will never marry him, that he is happier in his unhappiness, and that because of that, she will be the inspiration for great poetry. So there's interesting things, I think, in that No Second Troy that show that kind of, you know, that huge love of like Maud Gonne, where he speaks of her in such high tones of his earlier love poetry, isn't really there as much, I think, in No Second Troy. And it's just an interesting thing to think about, I think. And so the poem, for me, one of his greatest love poems to her is He Wishes for the Clots of Heaven. And I think it's a very contrasting poem to the No Second Troy. So much like it's softer and gentler, and it has this all-consuming passion of a man in love. So I'm going to just read that for you now. It's a very short poem. He wishes for the clots of heaven. Had I the heavens embroidered clots, enwrought with golden and silver light, the blue and the dim and the dark clots of night and light and half light, I would spread the clots under your feet. But I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams. And I think that's like a wonderful line. I feel sad that the man who composed that line never got the girl, but that's the way it happens. So I hope you find some of my thoughts interesting. I don't want to go on too long, but I leave you with that. And if anybody would like to add to it, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, very much. Very nice poem and beautifully read. And your comments on Maud Gonne are also very interesting. I'm willing to read that book you mentioned, the Yeats Women.
Yeah, very good.
Okay. Anybody would like to say anything, add anything, or? Okay, so I think this is it for today, and we are looking forward to meeting you again next Monday.
Okay, thank you very much. And it's lovely to see you all.
Okay. Stop recording.
Hey, bye-bye. See you all. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was really nice.
Okay, thank you all for being here. I'll stop the recording now.